Imagine you own a restaurant,
Okay.
a gorgeous 75-degree week in the middle of April. Your brand new outdoor patio is completely packed, and you are pulling in record profits.
Sounds like a great week.
Right. But suddenly there's a single data point on a meteorologist's screen, like 500 miles away, and it indicates a 5% thermal anomaly.
Just 5%.
Just 5%. But if you don't act on that seemingly tiny piece of information right now, you could lose thousands of dollars of inventory by Thursday.
Yeah, it's a terrifying scenario.
It really is. So, welcome to today's deep dive. Today is Monday, April 20th, 2026. And we are looking at a single, honestly fascinating grounding source today.
It's a really good one.
Yeah, it is a strategic climate briefing focusing on the spring warmth and severe weather outlook. It's compiled by a group called GWT2Energy. And they've basically synthesized raw data from NOAA, the Storm Prediction Center, and the Climate Prediction Center.
And reading through it, it completely reframes how you look at a weather forecast.
Totally. Because our mission today isn't just to tell you whether to grab an umbrella on your way out the door.
Yeah.
We are decoding how meteorologists and businesses use this kind of probabilistic forecasting to make, high-stakes decisions about energy infrastructure operations over the next 21 days.
Because for the average person, weather is just a background inconvenience, right?
Yeah, like, oh no, my picnic is ruined.
Exactly. But reading this briefing forces you to realize that weather data at this level is purely about risk management. For businesses and local economies, the atmosphere is essentially a highly unpredictable, tactical business opponent.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the sheer scale of the landscape they lay out in this report is wild. To understand the severe storms coming to the central U.S. midweek, you first have to understand the massive thermal engine that is just baking the southern half of the country right now.
It all starts with the heat, always. The entire southern tier of the U.S. is acting like a giant boiler right now.
And what an absolute oven it is. Looking at the 7-day extreme temperature alerts, starting today, the 20th through the 26th, the South and West are just dominating the map.
It's a massive warm pattern.
Yeah. We are talking about Houston and Dallas looking at 92 to 98 degree peaks. The briefing literally calls it record-challenging warmth.
Which is saying something for Texas.
Right. Meanwhile, Phoenix and the Southwest are baking between 95 and 102 degrees. And there are 0 cold extremes signaled. Not a single low temperature under 40 degrees is expected anywhere in these zones.
Well, we do need to define what the briefing actually means by an extreme event in this context, though.
Oh, good point.
Because, 95 degrees in Houston in August is just a standard Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, nobody even blinks.
Exactly. But an extreme, as defined in this data right now, isn't just hitting a specific high number on the thermometer. It is a departure of 15 degrees or more from the mid-April seasonal averages.
So it's all relative to the calendar.
Right. That is a massive thermal anomaly. It's the shock to the system that actually matters.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The briefing specifically warns about a 15 to 30% drop in HVAC efficiency across the South and Southwest because of this anomaly.
Yes, that 15 to 30% number is critical.
And it sounds a bit abstract until you think about it mechanically. So let me run this by you. Is an HVAC system transitioning from winter heating to suddenly cooling a 98-degree Texas day docker? Basically like waking a marathon runner out of a deep sleep and immediately forcing them to sprint a 100-meter dash.
What's fascinating here is that is exactly what it's like. It's the perfect analogy.
Because there's 0 warm-up.
None. Think about the physical components of millions of rooftop air conditioning units and residential heat pumps across these states. These systems have either been sitting completely idle or running very low-stress heating cycles for months.
So they aren't ready for a heavy load.
Not at all. The lubricants inside the compressors are cold and viscous. The coils are likely coated in a thick layer of winter dust and spring pollen.
Oh, right, which basically acts like a sweater, right? Like an insulator.
Exactly. Furthermore, the thermodynamic load of the buildings themselves, the concrete, the wood, the insulation, it hasn't acclimated to shedding heat yet.
Wow, I didn't even think about the buildings themselves holding heat differently.
Yeah, so when you suddenly demand 100% cooling capacity from these systems to fight off a sudden 15-degree temperature spike, the equipment fundamentally struggles. The heat transfer process is incredibly sluggish.
So the systems are just running longer, burning way more energy, just desperately trying to catch up to the thermostat setting.
And that efficiency drop doesn't happen in a vacuum. Millions of these systems are waking up and sprinting at the exact same moment across the entire regional grid.
Which ties directly into the briefing's warning of a moderate, like 40 to 60% risk of an energy spike in these affected zones.
Precisely. Because utilities specifically plan their major plant maintenance schedules for the shoulder month.
The shoulder months, you mean like April and October?
Right. They actively take large baseload power plants offline for repairs right now because historically they expect mild weather and low demand.
Oh, wow. So the actual power supply is artificially lowered on purpose right now.
It is. So when a record-challenging heat wave arrives a month early, supply is already low. And suddenly, millions of inefficient, dusty HVAC units are drawing massive amounts of current.
It's not just a sweaty afternoon, it's a systemic shock to the power grid.
Exactly. The grid operators suddenly have to scramble to buy really expensive power from peaker plants just to prevent rolling brownouts.
Man, so if the grid managers in Texas and the Southwest are sweating over these unexpected power drains, the local businesses on that grid are entirely at their mercy.
Without a doubt.
But it doesn't stop there. Because what happens when all that unseasonable, record-challenging heat in the South meets the typical shifting spring air patterns in the middle of the country?
Well, the atmosphere is a fluid, and physics dictates that all that energy has to go somewhere.
And it goes north, right?
Yeah. The heat dome over the South acts like a giant boiling reservoir of thermodynamic fuel. When a weather system moves across the Rocky Mountains and swings into the plains, it basically acts like a vacuum.
Sucking up all that heat.
It drags that deep, hot, incredibly moist air up from the Gulf of Mexico straight through Texas, and then it violently collides with cooler, drier spring air fronts moving down from the north.
Which brings us to the midweek collision, the severe weather threat.
The inevitable result of that collision.
Right. So looking at the 7-day severe weather outlook in the briefing, early week is actually quiet. But then Thursday and Friday, April 23rd and 24th, bring a marginal risk across the central and southern Great Plains right into the lower Midwest.
And those threats are pretty specific.
Yeah, the briefing outlines large hail, damaging winds, and isolated tornadoes. They explicitly mention target cities like Oklahoma City, Dallas-Fort Worth, Kansas City, and St. Louis.
It's a broad swath of the country.
It is. Oh, and real quick, a sigh of relief from the briefing. There's a less than 1% chance of any hurricanes or tropical systems in the next 21 days.
Which is definitely a relief. But that midweek severe threat in the central U.S. is where the physics we just talked about get really volatile.
How so?
When that hot Gulf air hits the cooler spring fronts, you get violent upward motion. Combine that with different wind speeds and directions at different altitudes, which is what we call wind shear.
Right, the turning of the wind.
Exactly. That atmospheric friction forces those thunderstorms to start rotating.
Wait, I want to pause and push back on the actual numbers the briefing uses here, because this is where human nature completely clashes with meteorological data.
Okay, let's hear it.
The briefing gives very specific probabilities. It says there's a 10 to 20% chance of a severe thunderstorm and a 2 to 8% chance of a tornado in these risk areas.
Those are the standard parameters, yeah.
Right, but as a listener, if you live in St. Louis and you hear there's a 2% chance of a tornado, you're ignoring it.
Human nature says to ignore single digits, yes.
Exactly. We either panic at the word tornado or completely ignore a 2% risk. Why on earth would a business manager spend thousands of dollars preparing for a 98% chance of absolutely nothing happening?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's entirely counterintuitive until you understand how meteorologists calculate those specific percentages.
Okay, lay the math on me.
A 2 to 8% risk of a tornado does not mean there's a 98% chance the sky stays blue overhead. In the world of the Storm Prediction Center, a 5% tornado risk means there is a 5% probability of a tornado occurring within 25 miles of any given point in that defined area.
Within 25 miles. Wait, really?
Yes, within 25 miles.
Okay, that changes the geographic footprint completely.
Dramatically. To put that into perspective, the baseline climatological risk of a tornado happening within 25 miles of you on any random spring day in Missouri is a tiny fraction of 1%.
At practically zero.
Maybe 0.05%. So when the briefing highlights a 5% risk, it is actually signaling a massive 100-fold increase over the baseline risk.
Oh, wow. So a 5% risk isn't a statistical shoulder shrug?
Not at all. It is the mathematical equivalent of a weather siren going off for an operational risk manager.
It's like your chance of getting struck by lightning suddenly going up 100 times?
Right.
The absolute number still sounds low, but the relative danger is enormous.
It absolutely demands concrete preparation. It means heightened situational awareness and operational readiness.
So not panic.
Right, you don't board up the windows and hide in the basement for 2 days, but you ensure your weather radio is on, your staff knows the exact shelter plan, and your outdoor equipment is tied down.
That makes so much more sense.
And interestingly, looking ahead at the 14 to 21-day outlook, the general spring severe potential remains moderate.
So it's not going away.
No, it basically maintains a 10 to 20% likelihood of a notable severe day regionally. But thankfully, there are no major historic outbreak signals in the models.
So we're dodging the massive historic outbreaks, but we are still dealing with incredibly sharp localized impacts. Which leads us perfectly to the exact demographic that this briefing seems hyper-focused on protecting, the restaurant and hospitality industry.
They are definitely the target audience here.
Because if grid managers are sweating and risk managers are treating a 5% chance like a siren, restaurant owners are just caught right in the crossfire.
They are essentially ground zero for this specific type of climate briefing. They are uniquely exposed to both the temperature anomalies and the severe weather probabilities at the same time.
So what does this all mean for them? The briefing outlines this incredible double-edged sword of spring.
The patio paradox.
Yes. On one hand, that broad spring warmth across the southern tier and west is incredible for business. I mean, the briefing says there's a 55 to 70% likelihood of that warmth sustaining itself over the next 14 days.
Which drives massive patio expansion.
Exactly. Everyone wants to eat outside, which drives a huge surge in outdoor dining revenue. But those midweek central U.S. storms introduce a 10 to 20% likelihood of operational disruption in the risk zones.
And that disruption is costly.
It's like opening a restaurant patio in late April is playing high-stakes poker with Mother Nature. You desperately want the lucrative payout of a packed outdoor seating area, but you need a solid insurance policy for when the sky turns green.
And the briefing provides the actionable mitigation steps that serve as that exact insurance policy.
What are they recommending?
Well, it explicitly advises securing outdoor patio setups against brief wind and hail threats.
Because of the downdrafts.
Right. If you have 50 umbrellas and temporary lighting rigs set up, a sudden downdraft from a thunderstorm can turn that lucrative patio into thousands of dollars of property damage in about 3 minutes.
What a nightmare.
But even more vitally, the briefing emphasizes preparing refrigeration backups for short power outages in the central corridor midweek.
Which loops right back to our earlier point about the power grid. If a severe storm knocks out a transformer, or if the local grid just buckles under the HVAC strain of that 15-degree thermal anomaly.
Having to hustle your customers off the patio is the least of your worries.
Yeah, exactly.
The cascading financial math of a power outage is terrifying for a restaurant. The real tension here is between maximizing profit during those sustained warm patterns and mitigating absolute financial ruin.
Because the margins are already so thin.
Exactly. You can lose a single evening of patio revenue to a thunderstorm, and yeah, that hurts your weekly margin. But if you lose power for 12 hours without a backup generator,
man.
you lose an entire walk-in freezer of inventory. That is thousands and thousands of dollars of prime products spoiled, potential health code violations, and you might not even be able to open the next day even when the sun comes out, just because you have no food to serve.
Put that way, the cost of renting or maintaining a backup generator suddenly looks incredibly cheap compared to restocking an entire commercial kitchen.
It's pennies on the dollar. The briefing is essentially trying to tell operators absolutely enjoy the 55 to 70% chance of great patio weather. Capitalize on it.
Make your money.
Right. But do not ignore the 10 to 20% operational disruption risk, and definitely don't ignore the 2 to 8% tornado risk, because those smaller percentages carry an outsized, potentially business-ending financial penalty if you are caught blind.
It is entirely about operational survival.
100%.
So, synthesizing this all, looking at the entire 3-week picture we've painted today, the next 21 days are really defined by anomalous warmth.
Yeah, stretching well into mid-May.
Right, there's a 40 to 55% chance of temperatures staying 15 degrees above average in those favored southern and western zones.
Which means the early HVAC strain, the grid vulnerabilities, the dusty coils struggling to cool.
None of that is a one-off.
No, it is a sustained reality.
Meanwhile, the central U.S. is basically playing a midweek game of dodgeball with moderate severe storms fueled by all that heat.
And just to be geographically complete, The briefing does note the only cooler signals are leaning toward parts of the Northeast and upper Midwest.
Oh, right. Can't forget them.
But even there, extreme cold is highly unlikely, sitting at under a 10% probability. The dominant story of this dataset is heat, the resulting atmospheric friction, and the cascading strain on infrastructure.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up, we do need to pass along the compliance notes included in the GWT2Energy briefing because they are crucial.
Very important.
We've thrown a lot of percentages around today, but these are probabilistic models, not absolute guarantees.
Right. Data from sources like the National Hurricane Center, the Storm Prediction Center, and the Climate Prediction Center change rapidly as conditions evolve.
Things shift day by day.
They do. This briefing is designed for high-level awareness and risk management. It explicitly disclaims liability for decisions based solely on this document, urging everyone to continually consult official local forecasts from the National Weather Service.
And obviously rely on licensed professionals for specific equipment or safety compliance.
Exactly. The models guide the strategy, but you still have to verify the reality on the ground.
They give us the odds for the poker game, but they don't deal the cards.
I like that.
And that leaves us with something really profound to chew over. We started by talking about whether is a simple binary choice, grabbing an umbrella or not.
The way most people view it.
Yeah. And we ended up mapping out thermodynamic loads, power grid spikes, a 100-fold increase in severe weather baseline risks, and high-stakes financial survival for local businesses. It just makes you look at the entire built environment completely differently.
Every building, every restaurant patio, every rooftop AC unit is essentially engaged in a constant, high-stakes negotiation with the local climate.
Which brings me to a final thought for you to mull over as you go about your week. If a 15 to 30% drop in HVAC efficiency and massive early-season grid strain becomes the new normal for our springs, how will the architecture of our favorite local restaurants and even the design of our own homes have to fundamentally adapt to survive this kind of seasonal whiplash?
It's a huge crisis.
Because waking the marathon runner to sprint with zero preparation, that just isn't going to work much longer. Thank you for joining us for today's deep dive. Stay aware, stay prepared, and we will talk to you next time.